Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Artsy Raven, and today our special guest is Katie Welch. So Katie lives in Kamloops and on Cortes Island, BC. Her debut novel, Mad Honey, was nominated for the 2023 OLA Evergreen Prize. She is a two-time alumnus of the Banff Centre and was a finalist for the 2023 CBC Short Story Prize. So welcome, Katie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
I remember telling one of my friends that my goal in life was to just be a short list for the CBC Short Story Prize, but he told me my goal in life was too small.
It took a lot of years to get on that list.
Yeah, I've entered more than once. I haven't gone anywhere yet. Um, so can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you became a writer?
Sure. Yeah. I grew up in Ottawa and I had a little sister. I have a little sister who had terrible nightmares. And I would tell her stories in the middle of the night to help her go back to sleep. And I loved doing that. And as soon as I could write, I started writing them down. And I knew I wanted to be a writer from early on, had some early success, decided, okay, well, I'll go to university for English literature. I think, didn't want to bet on creative writing. I thought I'd better be a little more practical than that.
That's what my parents told me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did that degree and I thought, well, I'll graduate and I'll become a novelist. I'll write a wonderful novel right away. And when I graduated, to my surprise, I didn't have a novel in me. I think I just didn't have enough life experience and yeah, it didn't go anywhere and I needed to eat. So I started planting, I had been planting trees
Oh, okay.
to pay my way through university.
Well, that's a
And
tough job, I've heard. Is it
yeah,
tough?
it's definitely physically, I would never have stuck with the job if I hadn't been broke when I got to Thunder Bay.
Okay. So
Yeah,
you did all sorts of things.
I did. And tree planting took me out to British Columbia after I graduated. This is where in BC is most planting takes place out here. The serious planting is in British Columbia. So I wound up moving out here. And then life just took hold of me. I got married, had kids, and the whole idea of writing receded.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so what made you do it? I guess, like, eventually you found your spark.
Divorce.
Ah, there we go. Catalyst
Yeah.
there.
I got divorced, and at the same time, I got sober. And in life after alcoholism and marriage, we looked scary, but also hopeful. And I started writing, and I found that at that point, I was in my mid 40s. I had something to write about.
Okay, okay. And then, so how did Mad Honey come about? Was that after the divorce?
Yes, everything that I published is after the divorce. I had this backlog of stories that I wanted to tell, and I just started writing intensely at that point. Mad Honey came about because I used to help a friend keep bees in Ontario.
Oh, okay, okay. Now, did you end up were you just writing by yourself, or did you join a writing group? Or
I went to a few meetings of a writing group in Kamloops. Mostly, I just shut the door and wrote by myself.
okay, okay, cool. And then now you have a new book out called Ladder to Heaven. So can you tell
Yes.
us a little bit about that and what inspired it?
Yes. So when I got divorced, my biggest fear was that my daughters, I had two teenage daughters at the time, would never forgive me for upending their life like that. And at the very same time, I've read Catherine Schultz's Pulitzer Prize winning piece in the New Yorker magazine, the really big one, about the imminent and inevitable subduction zone earthquake that we're expecting here in the Pacific Northwest. So these two ideas, uh, a woman whose children wouldn't forgive her for abandoning them, and an earthquake in British Columbia, merged and became Ladder to Heaven.
Okay, okay. So, like your protagonist, Dell, she struggles with addiction and guilt. I guess I want to ask you what drew you to explore these themes, but I guess it's really your life experience that sort of
Yes.
led to this. Um, Now you split your time between Kamloops and Cortes Island. Did your relationship to these landscapes influence the settings in the books at all?
Absolutely. So I've lived mostly in Cortes Island, sorry, mostly in Kamloops. The Cortes Island happened during the pandemic. My husband, I'm remarried. My second husband and I, during the pandemic, bought a small piece of raw land on Cortes Island and started trying to develop it by ourselves, YouTubing everything. And so then we started traveling a lot in British Columbia. And I had already explored BC a lot as a tree planter. So I'd seen a lot of wilderness, a lot of really wild spaces in BC. And those settings all show up in Laddered Heaven.
Cool. Okay, now in the book, um, animals and humans can communicate. Now, if you could understand one animal, which one would you pick?
Oh, that is such a hard question. Um, I mean, one of the epigraphs of the book is a quote from a philosopher and animal rights activist, Eva Meijer, a Dutch woman. And she says, well, animals have always been able to communicate with us. The thing is, we don't listen. I mean, I feel like if we really paid attention to what animals are trying to communicate to us, we would understand them. And kind of horrifyingly, as I wrote, I found that yes, a factory farmed animal is probably communicating to us. We're just not listening to what it's saying.
Oh, yeah, honestly, my husband doesn't listen to me either, but yeah. Okay, so when you're working on a book or a piece of writing, do you have a writing routine, or you a disciplined writer or a habit forming writer?
I think I'm a disciplined writer. I get up at 5 or 5:30 in the morning because my favorite thing is to write without interruptions
Hmm.
and when it's very quiet. And I write in that early part of the day. I also teach music for uh, my actual living. So those lessons are later in the afternoon. So I write from first thing in the morning until mid morning, or if it's a really good writing day, noon.
Okay. Um, so do you do any research for your books at all when you're writing about like the post-disaster kind of scenarios?
Yes, I read a lot of books about earthquakes. Cascadia's Fault was one that I read, a nonfiction book that got deeply into what it would look like in the Pacific Northwest. And then, of course, the really big one, the article by Catherine Schultz, is a very long and well researched article about the last earthquake of this magnitude to happen on the Pacific Northwest in the Pacific Northwest was in 1700, and white settlers did not realize that there could be earthquakes in this part of the world until the 1980s. They built nuclear reactors. They didn't safeguard buildings. They just went, oh no, there's no earthquakes here. In the meanwhile, there's indigenous art with canoes in the tops of the trees and bereft villages and people getting swept out to sea. I mean, all the evidence was there. We just didn't look at it.
Have you like are those drawings still kept somewhere? Like, is it?
Yes, Hakai magazine. I should have the name of the article at hand. I don't, but if you look up
Okay.
Earthquake Pacific Northwest, Hakai magazine has some of those paintings.
Okay. Yeah, that's fascinating. All there, anyways. Yeah, nobody bothers, so. Oh
Yeah,
gosh.
that earthquake in 1700 was recorded in Japan, where they keep track of such things. There was a giant tsunami, and that's how they know about that. And there's a forest in Oregon called the Ghost Forest, which they can carbon date back to exactly set the year 1700. Those trees their roots used to extend into fresh water. And in 1700, that fresh water became salt water and all the trees died.
Oh, wow. Okay, okay. Yeah, I mean, I do wonder how much history is kept, and how it's, like, will anyone know in the future? I mean, as much as we digitize things now, the other day my husband was lamenting about how long these hard drives are going to last, and then what happens when they're gone because people aren't writing as much anymore either. Um, so where does all this knowledge go, right?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Okay. Now, what advice do you give to aspiring writers, or maybe to your younger self, like when you were first starting to write seriously?
I was very critical of my own writing. I didn't allow myself to make the mistakes and write the bad drafts. I would be disgusted with something that I'd written and set it aside. And then I didn't put it out enough for feedback when I was younger. I mean, editors are the best. And it took me a long time to come around to realize that the more feedback you can glean from people who know what they're doing, people who care about helping you get your book to the best it can be, the better. I'm at the
Oh,
point now where I praise is lovely, but I don't really want to hear it. I don't want to hear it at all, actually. I want the criticism. I want to know what's wrong with this manuscript.
definitely. Yeah. Okay. Um, Now you've won, I mean, you've been a finalist for CBC and a Banff Centre alumni. Like, how did these experiences shape your development as a writer, do you think?
The Banff Centre has been monumental in shaping my ability to, my confidence. I didn't have any confidence until I went to an emerging writers intensive in 2016, and I was so unsure of myself that I thought, well, surely they made a mistake, and my whatever I submitted must have been the best 1,000 words that I ever wrote in my life, and I'll just go through this week and giant imposter syndrome. And by the end of that week in 2016, I felt that I was a writer and that I did belong to this community.
Can you tell me a little bit about uh how does a residence work, like at the Banff Centre?
They have a lot of different types of residencies. So you kind of go to the Banff Centre site and see which one would work best for you. I've never done a private residence. I mean, goal. I would love to go to the Leighton Colony, and those people who have the studios in the Leighton Centre are just working on their individual project and living at the Banff Centre. Both times that I went, it was a formal group of writers under a thematic heading. Like it was an emerging writers intensive the first time, and then I returned in 2023 for a literary form and constraint, which applied to the project I had at the time.
Okay, now you've written both short stories and novels, so is there something you like about each form or that's different that speaks to you?
It was again my experience at the Banff Centre that got me into writing short stories. I had, at the same time as being really insecure, I also had tons of hubris. I thought, I'm a novelist. I will only write novels. I will not explore the realm of the short story. I didn't read them that much and wasn't interested. And a mentor at the Banff Centre asked me why I had not explored writing short stories and submitting to literary journals. And I answered, as I just told you. And she said, well, that's not helpful to you. Short stories are great practice. They're like a condensed novel. There's so much that you can practice. And then getting those stories out and submitting them is also great for your writing career. So she convinced me to delve into the short story, which I find very difficult, harder than novels.
Yeah, you have a limited time frame or limited words to get everything there
I
compared to
fuss
the
with
novel.
stories.
Yeah, the novel you can sort of kayak along, sort of, go on a journey.
Kayak along, I love that.
Sorry, talking about BC, I'm just thinking of
That's
water and trees and
perfect image for ladder to heaven. Yeah, paddling away through my
yeah.
novel.
Okay. Now, did you ever receive any surprising feedback about your work?
What do you mean by surprising?
Oh, something you didn't expect? That I don't know, like, because when you put your work out there for editors and for readers, sometimes things come back to you that you didn't think about, that you could use in the next piece or whatnot. So,
Um, I guess I'm constantly having my eyes opened by editors in that way.
okay.
An early reader for Ladder to Heaven was a woman I know in Ottawa, the mother of a friend, Patty Dupuy, and she's incredibly insightful. She has about 8 children, and she's just a really really good observer of human nature. And she read an early draft of Ladder to Heaven, and she said, well, I think you're writing about redemption, and I think, you need to focus more on this character, on Dell exclusively, because originally there's another character named Chung who Dell meets, and it turns her life around and allows her to move toward, well, she's on two journeys, an outward journey and an inward journey, and he's her guide on both of them. And I had written Chung's entire life story in the second half of the novel, because I thought, oh, well, the reader needs to know everything about him. And this editor said, well, he's a great character, but you're now dividing your focus. Yeah, and I couldn't see that. I'd been working on it for years already, but I was too close to it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, well, my first book was called Undead Sorcerers. It's an East meets West vampire book, and I'd
Oh, wow.
mentioned red pockets, and my editor is an Asian, and then she's like, "What are red pockets?" And I was like, "What do you mean you don't know what red pockets are?" But it's like, during special occasions or Chinese New Year, like you give out red pockets. Like married couples would give red pockets filled with cash usually to children and anyone that's unmarried. So it's a custom that I grew up with all my life. But then you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess they don't have that in their family. So it helped to have like a diverse, like different people read it, and especially, and the editors will catch things that because it's too close to you, the manuscript, like you just can't see sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So okay. Now, are you working on anything else that you want to share, or?
Sure. I'm working on a novel about, so I planted for so many years, planted trees, and my publisher suggested a few years back, she said, well, what would be interesting is a mystery set in a tree planting camp. And at the time I thought, tree planting was a long time ago, and I'm not sure I can write that. And then the idea just wouldn't leave my brain. I kept waking up and thinking about it. And finally in 2022, I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to start writing this thing. And that's what I'm working on now.
Okay, really cool.
It's a non-traditional mystery. The mystery is winds up, my focus right now is, why do people cut down trees at the rate they do in the first place?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Katie, you're going to do a reading. Can you give us a bit of context and let us know what you're reading before you start?
Sure thing. So I'm reading from Ladder to Heaven, and this is from the opening of the book. So Del Samara, the protagonist, is on a beach in Vancouver, in West Vancouver. It's post-earthquake, and she's having a conversation with a pair of sea lions. Now, sea lion voices are in italics, so I'm going to change my voice when I'm a sea lion. I slit one eye open, blinked droplets from my eyelashes, and licked salt from the corners of my mouth. 5 years ago, the sea lions would have fled, but that was then. I rolled over and stretched out. Sun caressed my front and rock toasted my bottom. For a long time, no one spoke. The angle of the sun changed, warm beams slanting in from the horizon. This rock will get cold. I know, I wish I could stay out here. As a rule, animals were bemused by the chronic dissatisfaction to which humans were prone, and didn't respond to wishes and hopes. Things were, or they weren't. Speculation was nonsensical. Why swim out at all? You're not very good at it. The sea lions barked harsh little laughs, and I tensed. I had come from a plateau crisscrossed with creeks and dotted with lakes, but far from the sea, and had guessed sea lions would be taciturn like deer, but maybe they were more like coyotes, hoodlums who cracked jokes and encouraged each other. A band of water sparkled westward, a golden road to a promised land. Seagulls spiraled overhead. I made a pillow with my hands, knuckle bumpy and finger ridged, yet warm and familiar. My left hand was just a thumb and 2 fingers. Pink stumps, the tips wrinkled like breakfast sausages, protruded where pinky and ring fingers should have been. I wanted to swim in the ocean one last time, I said. Are you dying? The sea lions observed a polite silence. A lackadaisical tide lapped the rock. Crawling away somewhere private to die was a shared right of existence, behavior that commanded respect. Will you die soon? I wanted to tell them that if I had the courage to end my life, I would already be dead. I had survived 3 bitter winters, huddled in a shack on a remote lake. I could have plunged from cliffs and split my skull on rocks. In Vancouver, I had paused on the twisted remains of the Ironworkers Memorial Bridge and considered jumping. I had chickened out. A force stronger than my will insisted that I continue to live. You don't seem close to death. Why are you here? A breeze brushed my skin, and I shivered. It's a long story. Story! Story! Tell the story! The sea lions levered bulky bodies to front flippers and rocked from side to side. I could smell them, a curious mixture of dog and fish. Sun touched the ocean, and the golden road turned vermilion. I sat up and brushed minuscule rocks and bits of shell from my breasts, leaving a rash of red impressions. I hugged my knees to my chest. My bones ached. A stretch of cold water lay between me and the shore. I longed for my bed of cedar fronds and the fungal aroma of my sleeping bag. I have to swim back. I'll freeze out here. Put your skin back on. It's not skin. They're called clothes. If you die without it, it's skin. Tell the story. The gray sea lion reared her head, revealing long yellow teeth and a gaping black mouth, and I stood up to defend myself. What a fool I was, putting myself in this ridiculous situation, ignorant about sea lions and naked with 2 robust specimens. Sea lions were carnivores, I suddenly remembered, as strong and agile in water as they were graceless and hobbled on land. The pair of sea lions grunted. Fear rippled across my shoulders and dried my mouth. I'll come back tomorrow, I said. If there's sun, we don't come here on rain days. I'll come back the next sunny day then. You better, bitch. I was shocked until I realized that by bitch the animal meant unnamed female. I smiled. I'm called Dell. Tish, said the small one. Tosh, said the big one. The sea lions slipped nose first into the sea. As if they'd been keeping the day alive, the sky darkened and the water became less welcoming. I rubbed my limbs to stimulate circulation. A gentle tapping came from the crevice, where a plastic bottle had eddied out and bumped against the rock like a taunt. I dove over the trash, brisk shock of frigid ocean. Haunted by the flash of pointed teeth, I swam vigorously, kicking up froth with flipper feet. I reached the shore and straightened in stages, like an evolutionary echo of my ancestors. Stars dotted the darkening sky over Vancouver, a broken city, and the flooded Fraser River Valley. I closed buttons with fumbling fingers, slid pants over chilly thighs, and swished through tall grass into shadowy forest. I palpated plastic bags in my backpack to identify the contents and ate food that tasted like dirt. Pockmarked corn, dandelion leaves, flaccid roots. Sticky with the sea, I slithered into my sleeping bag. Whoosh hush, whoosh hush. Waves breaking on a shore. Seaside air is a balm, the very breath of life on earth. Filtered through cedars and infused with ocean, each inhalation healed my sore body. But chilly white mist enveloped the trees, seeped inside my skin, and drifted through me like despair. Once upon a time, I had 10 fingers, a home, and a family. That was before the Juan de Fuca tectonic plate sprang free of its sticking place, releasing centuries of stored kilojoules, and an earthquake measuring 9.3 on the Richter scale shook the west coast of North America like a colicky infant in the hands of a raging parent. Fissures swallowed neighborhoods. Bridges collapsed and tossed cars into chasms. Glass and steel filled the streets. Nuclear waste tainted water supplies. Dams fractured, releasing floods, and landslides buried roads. Tsunamis battered harbors and toppled buildings. The earthquake brought death and destruction. I should have been safe. Once upon a time, I lived on a farm in the Okanagan Valley with my husband Prax and 3 half-grown children. When the earthquake struck, Amelia had been a feisty and rebellious teenager, Thane a sullen adolescent, and Cleo a quirky 12-year-old. Manx, our golden retriever, had also lived on the farm, and 2 horses, Math and Duchess, and a dozen sheep, more or less, depending on cougar attacks and the toughness of the lambing season. Our life had been enviable, marbled with imperfections, but overwhelmingly rich and good. We'd been living far from the epicenter, yet I had lost everyone and everything. How was it possible? Not lost as in dead, lost as in lost track of. After the earthquake, animals spoke. I heard them in my head and answered them out loud. Animals are better listeners than talkers, and their expectations are refreshingly low. A bull snake once listened to me for hours, yellow-black eyes unblinking. Yes, the snake had said, then slithered into the sunset and never returned. Sea lions weren't like snakes. Tish and Tosh wanted to hear why I was alone on the coast, preparing to die. The truth would feel good, like a deathbed confession. But where should I begin? Could I relate events coherently, without mistakes and omissions? My story was blurry because when the earthquake struck, I had been stoned. The drugs were because of a fall from a horse. The horse was because of Henry.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to be on our show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this podcast and everything that gets the word out there about literature. Thank you.
Thank you. For more upcoming episodes of the Artsy Raven about writing and publishing, visit us at jfgarrar.com/arpodcast. A reminder to Patreon subscribers that there is bonus content available for every episode on the Patreon website. If you enjoyed the show, you can show your appreciation by buying us some digital coffee. The Artsy Raven is produced by J.F. Garrard. The voice in the show's introduction is Chris Gorman, and music is by Tim Moore. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, stay safe.